Hello and welcome to I'm going right now. We're here. So hello and welcome to a very special edition of Sutton Impact Family Style. I'm Jason, and today my brother is here.
Hi everyone. Brother to Jason and son to Bill.
Yes. And we are going to talk, we promised, I think my dad has promised on the show many times to have a little bit of esports talk. And we're going to do a little bit of that and some video game stuff, and then we'll probably get into some just random topics towards the end. But we'll start out with some, because you have a very interesting job. Obviously, you're somewhat connected to esports on some level, correct? I would say.
I would say that League of Legends is I would say the one that brought it to the modern place that it is today. I think a lot of things you're reading about right now are around Overwatch League, and they've done an amazing job with PR and getting a lot of hype around it. But the truth is, League of Legends has been selling out stadiums in North America, Korea, China, and Brazil for the last 7 years. We just were very focused on the fans, and we didn't worry about a lot of media hype around it. We didn't worry about having ESPN talk about it. We worried about having a really great competition and a good fan experience. And, we're getting ready for Worlds right now as we speak, which is our NBA championship, so to speak. And this year it's in Korea. Last year it was in China, and last year 80,000 people attended. This year we're expecting over 200 million people to actually stream the event.
That's just crazy. That's amazing, though. Because, you think about, just the amount of people, and that's an incredible amount of people. That's wow.
And I've got to tell you, if you've never seen it live, and I think from talking to our dad and friends and people who've been in this industry for a very long time, the only thing I can compare it to is I got to go to a Manchester United game in the UK many, many years ago. And growing up in North America, watching NFL football and watching NBA, I had seen rowdy fans. I had seen cheering. When I went to see Manchester United in the UK, I had never seen the type of fan base that you see. That is, the entire day is dedicated. They're wearing scarves and they're chanting with each other, and they have songs, and they're cheering not just the team but actually amazing play. And when you watch an esport game live, it's amazing to watch a fan base get excited about the best moments in the game, necessarily who's on top or which specific player made the move. But wow, I can't believe they just pulled that off, and I want to celebrate that because I'd love to do that.
So it's more celebrating the skill of the individual player as opposed to the teams per se, or? But I'm sure that
even on a higher level, like the skill of being able to pull that off, knowing that they have the same keyboard and the same mouse in their homes, and they're watching something that they didn't know was possible or done 10 times better and smoother than they've ever seen. And I think the interesting thing that people don't know that to watch esports is usually best 3 out of 5. And so I've noticed that when you go to an arena to watch it, they want to see lots of games. Not because they paid $30 or $25, but because they love this game. So you go to the NBA, you know what you're getting, right? You might get an overtime, but for the most part, you're getting 4 quarters of basketball and you're done. In esports, you might get 5 games. You might get 3. You might have a team win the first 2 and then the other team win 1, and now you're going into 4. And that's a really big aspect of it that I don't think you see in most sports, because most sports don't have that type of round-robin style play.
Well, definitely not all in one day, no.
No. With all these now, I don't really know when I'm going to leave, because I know when it's going to start, and I have no idea when it's going to end. I can add up what the time would be to get through all 5 games if it happened, but that's over 5 hours. To watch, one video game.
Yeah. All right, so this is we typically do a sports business segment, so I'll try to frame this question as best I possible in a sports business type way. Now, obviously, 200 million people streaming it live is an insane number, and that's better than almost every sport in America does on a weekly, daily basis, I think, if I'm not mistaken. How do you perceive this as something that people that aren't into league now could get into, or is it something where you have your audience now and you're worried about just continuing to have a future audience? Like, do you worry about getting, someone who like me who plays video games but has never really been a league person to watch? Do you care about like the older like my dad? Do you care about our dad's demographic watching? Like, where does the sport? Is it just like I look at hockey. Hockey is pretty niche. Like the people that love hockey. And they had their little moment where they rose, but now they're kind of cool just being hockey. Like, is there a way to grow it to people that aren't already in it, I guess?
It's the biggest challenge I think that all of the esports are going to have, which is you and I, now 35 plus years each have been playing video games every week of our lives for the most part. I'm sure there's been times where we haven't done it for months because we're busy, but at the end of the day, we've stayed up on top of it and played them. I think the challenge today is if I were to put somebody who's not played a game in 20 years in front of that screen, I don't know if they'd understand what they were looking at. And so what's interesting about League of Legends is we find that after players are finished playing League of Legends, maybe they have a baby, and they have a life change, and they just can't play this game as dedicated as they once did. They now want to watch esports because it still lets them see something that they really had an emotional connection to, because our game takes 45 minutes minimum to play, and you have to have a PC to do it. You can't do that with a 2-year-old in your arm. You can turn on YouTube or Twitch and now ESPN and watch esports if you know what's going on. But I think the challenge is, how do you educate the majority of people who maybe aren't gamers? And I use that term loosely because I think everybody has a phone now, so everybody has the ability to play games. But Overwatch League, I swear, if you haven't played Overwatch, it has to be really hard to follow at the pro level. It's fast, and it's first-person perspective, so it's shifting all the time. At the end of the day, League of Legends is at least a top-down, almost full-map coverage. And I can kind of explain it very quickly, which is capture the flag or strategic chess. But even then, to grow that to the next 100 million who have never touched a game, I think that's a big challenge. I really do think that's the challenge that's going to be on everybody's mind that's investing in this. All the major sports companies investing in this. The Overwatch League put tons of money into this, and their idea is get fans because we'll play by geography. We think we need to have an LA team, and a Dallas team, and a Boston team, and that's how we'll get people who don't know games to want to cheer for their local team. League of Legends decided to not do that. We knew we had a large audience of people that loved and understood the nuances of our game and started with them first.
Right. Now, just because, obviously, growing up, I don't think golf was ever super popular, And then, obviously, a certain player came along and, seemingly, are there any, could there be a Tiger Woods of esports? Is that even a thing that could possibly happen, or is that already something that wouldn't be able to take place? What kind of...
It's happening in Asia, and your LeBron James of esports exists. His name is Faker, and he's in Asia. I think what happens there, though, is go to Korea, go to China, you are going to see an entire culture growing up, young boys and girls playing games as social circles in their teenage years, dating each other based off of the levels they achieved in these games. We haven't hit that yet. So I think Faker, who makes over $1 million a year playing the game, I think Faker has transcended that, like a Yao Ming, basically, in his home country. I just don't think we've done it in North America. And in North America, the biggest problem is we've got a lot of young junior non-sensitive males playing these games.
Right.
And you're finding that they're the ones who very quickly make some huge mistakes that you hope the best athletes never make. But these guys are 16. These guys are 17. They're making $100,000 minimum a year. And they're saying some pretty negative things. And I think that puts a bad light on them being that athlete that you want your kid to necessarily get to know. You know, and even, obviously, you know, you and I know there's plenty of athletes who have made plenty of mistakes, too.
Of course.
But I think when you're putting a ton of them in the 16 to 20 range, where they've been talking a certain way for years, you're seeing it all the time. I think that a lot of spotlight in getting them to grow beyond that and getting really mainstream sponsors. A lot of them are sponsored by keyboard companies and mice companies and computer companies. When somebody's sponsored by Coke or Rolex or American Express in the esport world, I think that's when we might start to see some of these personalities take on a bigger life. You're seeing it with Ninja.
With Ninja, right. With Fortnite.
Fortnite, right? So Fortnite doesn't really have a professional esports scene. They have kind of a pop culture scene. They've got
NBA players. Yeah, love it.
NBA players and NFL players, and you've got mainstream music artists. I just saw a commercial this morning for Samsung with Ninja, and it's all around promoting the new Galaxy 9 phone and the tablet. He's got a deal with Red Bull right now. He is talking to lots of major brands because he also has a wholesome image.
He does. He
keeps his chat extremely moderated. He kicks anybody out that suggests anything racial, anything sexual. He really has been careful of his language, and he knows that he's got an audience of as young as 7, to older than me. But he's the one right now that I think is putting a spotlight. He's on the cover of ESPN magazine this week.
Yeah, it's
that to me says maybe we're getting there, because I don't know ESPN putting an esport athlete or a video game athlete on the cover, not mocking on it this time, being very serious about the business behind it.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Yeah, he's sort of transcended. But like you said, he is sort of, the way he's been able to keep his content clean and, pretty mainstream has been pretty, it's pretty rare in that community. Because, anybody that jumps online in an online game, it's a pretty toxic atmosphere for the most. It's not that they're all that way, but it's tough not to play for an hour or two in any sort of multiplayer game and not run into somebody that's just awful.
One of our most popular streamers, his name's Tyler One. And Tyler One actually has over 1 million people watching him on Twitch and YouTube a day. He is an ex-college athlete. He's jacked. He has a very attractive girlfriend. His whole act, and he knows it's an act, is to be the young male you dream of. He's got an attractive girlfriend. He lives in his own apartment. He's got muscles. He played football, and he plays League of Legends very well. But he talks an extreme amount of, just hype and messes around with you and gets in your face. And I looked at his audience, and I'm like, they love it. He's everything that they think they want to be. And
right.
That's why he knows he has to play into it.
It's crazy. Yeah. And Fortnite, obviously, not an esport, but it just had an SNL sketch, which is probably the signification that it's, about as mainstream as you can possibly be. And then you hear that, there are parents that are literally hiring Fortnite coaches so that their kids don't feel embarrassed at school, but they suck at Fortnite, which is pretty crazy. I don't remember anything like that ever happening.
No, and I'll tell you the one key, League of Legends is huge, but League of Legends is available on PC desktop gaming.
Right.
Fortnite is available on mobile phones, both Android and Apple, PC, Mac, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation, and Xbox. I've never seen a game that was literally free on all platforms and available on every type of gaming platform.
And the one thing I will give it credit for, you can spend money, obviously. You can spend real life money, but it's the best version of free to play you can be, because you don't have to spend any money, and you can get everything through the game. I mean, it takes you a little longer with some things, and you aren't going to get all the cosmetic items, but you watch how many companies have just blown it with the whole, microtransactions and everything else. They've been able to make a ton of money with the legitimately free-to-play game, which is...
And they make players feel good about it. A little monetization in Fortnite can get you everything if you're willing to play every day. They give you challenges to unlock. They're really good at customer service. If they mess up their servers, they typically send a free thing to an account. And for those listening today that don't know much about the way games make money these days, it's cosmetics. It's buying something to make your player look cool. And a lot of people were like, well, why does that matter? Why would you care? Well, it's kind of being the in kid. When a new costume comes out in Fortnite, if you play that game a lot, you want to be in the know. You want to be the latest. And it doesn't make you more powerful. It just makes people know that, you're strutting your stuff out there, and that's what games are making money on these days.
Yeah, it's a brilliant model. Because you look at games in the past that have just failed at that, and it seemed like it was right there out there for everybody, and they were just the first ones to do it. But again, they also have like a cartoony style, so that if you're a parent and you watch your kid playing this game, you're not like, there's not blood, there's not gore. It's very cartoony. It feels very safe. I don't think it sets off a lot of alarm bells with parents at home.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So that was pretty interesting, I think. So let's move.
I think you're only going to see, so much more in the next 2 years. The same people behind Overwatch League are trying to make the big Call of Duty League, and they've got a game, as you know, coming out October 12th that is going to be competitive. And, they have a fan base around the globe. It's one of the biggest gaming franchises in the world.
Oh, yeah. And again, we don't feel like they're really going to take a bite out of Fortnite, but a few of the other games that are in sort of the Battle Royale genre, like PUBG, which I have noticed from watching, they've been spending a lot of money on advertising up until as is Black Ops. But it feels like there's only a space for so many of these games to really thrive.
There is. You and I know better than anyone. We can help educate any parent out there or anybody that doesn't play games. Games take longer than ever, and now they're all games as a service. So you really have to pick the 2 or 3 that you can play, because you can't play them all, or you can't. You can try them all, but you can't spend enough time in all of them to get good at them to actually play at the level that would be enjoyable.
No, and I was even thinking like on a micro level, like I got the Switch yearly service for the $20 a year.
Yeah.
And with it, they gave you 20 old Nintendo games to download. And the 20 Nintendo games, like, it's very easy to switch back and forth because you got up, down, left, right, and then you've got an A button and a B button. And that's pretty much it. That's so simple. So you could hop in and it's like, it takes you about 30 seconds to go from playing Mario to playing ice hockey to playing Gradius. Like, it's all, so right there. But like with the modern games, you've got 4 face buttons, 4 triggers, 2 sticks, plus sometimes a pad if you're playing with PlayStation. You have all these different inputs. And to get competent at those games, you can't, you kind of got to focus in a little bit more, I think, than you did in the past.
And the secret of League of Legends.
Yeah. I think we lost Dan for a second. Audio problems. So we'll hop into our next topic was going to be our game of the year. I've given this a lot of thought. I have a couple that have really stood out. Spider-Man, which I just finished up, was, it sounds silly to say it was amazing because of the Amazing Spider-Man and all the stuff around it. But it was just an amazing experience to feel like you're Spider-Man. And I had very little connection to the character of Spider-Man going in. But when you're swinging through the city, it just feels fantastic. It's so freaking.
I also played Spider-Man. I think it did great stuff. For me, if I'm just going to go out and tell you my game of the year right now that I was most surprised by and enjoyed the most this year, it had to be God of War.
And that I was about to get to my game of the year, which is also God of War. Now, how much do you think, it's obviously an amazing experience, but you and I both were not big God of War people prior to this, right?
And we weren't, and I think that's what helped me actually put it at Game of the Year, because I had played some of the old ones, never been inspired, didn't really think that they were really that well done. And then this one came along, and from the mechanics to the narrative, I was waiting to hear more of the stories than just playing, and it's rare that I kind of care that much in an action game, that I actually wanted to hear some of the mythology and the history behind some of these characters was so well written, and the relationship between the father and the son in the game, and the progression the game offered. I didn't want to put it down for 3 days, and I don't think I did.
No, it's absolutely phenomenal. Like the first battle is one of the coolest boss battles I've ever had in a game. Just jumping right out of the game.
They did things that I haven't seen and still didn't think were possible in this generation of gaming, and they also did something that I thought was amazing, which is they bucked the trend of selling multiple versions and DLCs and microtransactions. It was one $60 game that you got everything, and they knew what they had, and I think they knew to give the fans that knew it something great, but the new ones, bring them into this franchise in a healthy and fun way, and it really was.
Yeah, because it's one of those games where, it's one of those games where you really have to nitpick to find flaws. Because, like you said, the combat was phenomenal. The way the axe felt. In the game, you almost have like Mithril. You have like Thor's hammer, but it's an axe. But the way you throw it, you can feel it in the controller as it's coming back to you, and it vibrates in your hand, and everything about it controls great, looks great. The story was amazing. You took a character that was basically like just an angry bro, almost. Kratos was just sort of this jacked up, angry guy that was fighting the gods, and you gave him real depth. And I was interested. I cared about him. I cared about his story, his son. It looked great, and it felt like it was the right length. It was a good challenge, but never unfair. Like, the game was just amazing. And I'm hoping that, obviously we have a few more games coming up, but I'm hoping that, if anyone beats that, it's going to be impressive.
Yeah, and the only game that's probably potentially going to beat it would be Red Dead Redemption 2, but, it's interesting because it's based on a Western, and it had a huge fan base that kind of swelled over years after release, but it's not going to be for everyone.
No.
So it'll be interesting. I think God of War sitting in the world of critics at a 95 average out of 100 plus reviews, and that's the highest rated game this year.
And I guess if we had to throw out some other, just sort of honorable mentions, Celeste, which I think is available on most platforms. Did you play Celeste?
I didn't. I've heard a lot of great things about it. Just didn't have the time this year for that one.
Celeste is like a little, almost looks like a Super Nintendo-esque sort of game. It's sort of a platformer with a beautiful story beneath it. Like, bizarrely, there is a story, and it's a beautiful story. And the platforming is very, very challenging. But unlike games like Super Meat Boy or some of the other super challenging puzzlers or platformers that have come out over the years, this one, it's a very forgiving system. Like, you go right back to where you started. Like, if once you get to almost when you get to each screen, it's almost like an old game where it's you can see it almost slide over. It's like a new screen, and there's your platforming puzzle to get through. And you're always going to start right back at the beginning. And then what they offered, which I know the hardcore gamers in the world will, complain about, but they do have a mode where you almost have like old school Mario, where you have a God mode sort of. So if there's a particular platforming section that you just can't get past, and you've tried 10, 15 times, and it's just too frustrating, you can actually turn on like an invincible mode for a small amount of time, get past that stage, and move on to the next platforming section. Which, I guess now is a less game, as I don't game nearly as much as I used to, and not that sort of hardcore platform. I really appreciated the opportunity to not have to stop the game right there because I couldn't get past that section. Which, again, I know some people complain about, but I always liked that in the old Nintendo games, or some of the Nintendo games, and they find, with the Wii and the Wii U, where they sort of added that, not easy mode, but just, you can get past this section that's killing you, which I really appreciated.
Yeah, and I think it's following a trend in gaming this year, which is that they're starting to realize that not everybody likes every aspect of every game, and so they're giving you the control to change difficulty. You can change the difficulty of puzzles only, or combat only, or overall, skill. And I think it allows everybody to just enjoy some of these games for the story and get through them and not be frustrated like we were, in the 80s as we grew up on some of those old Nintendo games that were impossible. You had to have a friend that knew how to do it, or call a hotline to get you help.
Nintendo Power.
Or use, at the time, a thing called the Game Genie, which was literally a cheat device that you could enable cheats to enable you to be a better player. So I've been happy to see those trends come in and allow gaming to be more accessible to a wider range of people. Celeste, I hear from every critic I listen to as one of their top 3 of the year.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm typically not a huge. I mean, I've always loved the Mario platforming games, but I've never been a huge platformer per se. But this one, like I said, the story really makes it, and it is very challenging. But it's a fair challenge. Like, you never feel cheated when you don't get it. But there were at least 4 or 5 different moments during the game where I threw on the invincibility, just ran through that stage, because it just, But rather than leaving me, I appreciate that it didn't leave me frustrated standing there like an idiot. He was like, okay, you can't get past this section, that's fine. And again, for all the people that can get past that section, you're awesome. You got good, and give yourself a pat on the back. You won. You're great. So, for everybody else, we still get to play.
For me, I'll have to say that even though Fortnite's been out it's only been a year. Their 1-year anniversary was last week.
Oh wow!
And it's had 5 seasons in that 1 year. It just started season 6, so I had played it on and off, but it was season 5 where I really put in the time. I won some games on my own. I learned the building mechanic, and I kind of, as a guy who works in games, finally got to understand and appreciate why it is so sticky and why the loop works so well. And I don't think everybody can follow in their footsteps, but for me, when I put it on the Nintendo Switch in particular, that allowed me a new way to play, where I enjoyed it a lot more. It felt a lot less hardcore to me, and it gave me a way to experience it with a group of people who were probably not as good as the PC players, which is fine, and enabled me to kind of get good, as you said, on my own terms, and just take some mistakes and try some things. And I put a lot of hours into it the month of August for sure.
No, it was, I did pretty much the same, because it was nice that, once everybody on Switch, it became the Switch, it was like a whole new group of people that never played, so everybody sort of starting out on that same level. So I didn't feel like I was getting destroyed every 5 seconds. It was nice. But I have gone back once in the last month, and I did get destroyed pretty badly. So people on Nintendo have caught up. So we mentioned Red Dead. That's probably my most anticipated game of the next, till the end of the year for sure. It sounds like it's crazy detailed. I mean, I'm sure that anyone that's paid attention to gaming has heard about the horse testicles, which supposedly react to the weather in the game. And that, if you kill an animal and you throw it on your shoulder is going to have blood on it till you clean it. And while that sounds exciting, I guess that would be my one worry about the game, is that it's going to be so monotonous that it may be less fun than it could be. But I'm still very excited for it, as someone that loves Westerns and games.
I mean, what we both know going into it is they're going to have a great, detailed, cinema-quality story.
Without a doubt.
Rockstar just doesn't know how to make a game that doesn't have that quality, the character depth, the dialogue depth, and literally being able to, at times, think that you're involved in something as depth, as deep as the Godfather trilogy. They have amazing writers. They have a really strong sense of being able to design a bunch of gaming elements that you never see in other games. But to your point, is some of that stuff, when it gets into life, do I have to eat right now? Do I have to shower? Do I have to trade this thing in? When you go too far, it starts to be like, well, I can do this stuff in real life. Why would I want to do it in the game?
Which is why I've never been a fan of The Sims. I don't want to have my character run around and shower and eat. I'm like, that sounds I have to do that. Don't make me care to do that. But they also are promising something, and I've heard from the people that have played it, obviously not myself, but people in the industry that have played it, that it may be the first real world game as opposed to open world game, where it's not going to be like you'll see a little person with a little question mark over their head, give or take. You walk over, you talk. He said, I left my daughter's teddy bear out in the wilderness. Can you go get it? And then you fight a bear. That it's supposed to be a much more organic experience where everything just feels like it's part of the life. And if that's the case, that may make all that other stuff feel better, I suppose. If they're able to pull that off.
I mean, no matter what, I say this all the time at this company, and I've said it at previous jobs I've worked in, Rockstar's got what every brand wants, which is they take as much time as they feel they need to bring the next thing to life. They're very guarded with how much they share and when they share it. And they have the ability almost few brands have in this world. They literally could tweet at 9 o'clock on a Thursday to say, tune in at 10, and they will have millions of people, retweeting just the tune in at 10 tweet. Everybody wants to know what Rockstar's coming out with next. And, they've built such a quality experience that I will, no matter what, whether I like the game or not, I'll be pleased to give them the money and to be a part of that for however long I stay in it.
I was about to say, they've reached that point of brand loyalty with me where the second I see a Rockstar game on sale that goes up for pre-order, I pre-order it. Because I know that it's going to be whether or not I end up enjoying it or as much as other games, it's going to be a quality game from head to toe. Whether it's their Rockstar table tennis game, which sounds insane, but it was amazing. It was an amazing game of table tennis.
I remember laughing at it because I was like, oh my God, they've made a table tennis game and I'm going to buy it.
Yeah.
But I don't like table tennis, but I like Rockstar. You and I have talked about Blizzard the same way. When Blizzard comes out with something, they have built such a trust with us as gamers and people that appreciate the craft of art and good story writing and good music that we're just like, hey, whether or not this game is for me, I want them to have my money and I want to try it out because I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, even if it's a genre I don't like. I'll do it.
Yeah, and that's something very rare. Because I could probably list the list of companies that I feel that way about on like a hand maybe in this world. And some are some new companies too. I do feel like some new companies are getting back to sort of that, whether that was a mythological thing from like the Don Draper 60s and 50s where, companies had that sort of brand loyalty. But it does seem like the customer service in games too is all sort of coming back. People, I think it sort of went away, but now it's sort of on its way back. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think gaming has one of the things that you can be mad at the tourist industry and travel industry and tweet to Delta whenever you're mad, and I'm sure they get back to as many people as they can. But gaming has built some of the largest social feedback tools out there, and I think developers like Riot, where I work, and Blizzard and others, we're really good at having teams dedicated to spending time with the community, not dealing with quality control, but literally listening to things they say and thinking about challenges and even taking ideas. Fortnite's great at this. They put something in the game on a Monday and find out that a lot of players don't like it, and by Thursday they patched it out. Some players probably liked it. Some players didn't. It unbalanced the game, and they saw the need to step in. And I think it makes me feel better about giving them more money because I'm like, I know that it's an ongoing thing. They need to continue to work on this thing in order to continue to make it fair and fun and quality.
And I think that's the other thing too. We talked a lot of Fortnite today, but I guess like I said, it was just on SNL, so it's pretty much in every NBA player talks about it. But I think when you make a quality game and you have great customer service, that when you do put out something like Pets, which they just put out recently, so you get different backpacks to wear that are really not functional. They're just more a style in the game. And again, like you said, it's the latest bling. Now they have pets, so you can run around with a puppy in your backpack because it's adorable and why not? But when you have a product that's giving you all this stuff, and then they put out these little here's pay $10 to have a dog on your backpack. You almost want it because it looks cool or adorable, whatever your thing is, whatever cat pet thing you want. But it's also you're almost like I like what you've done so much as a company. I want to give you more money because you've been so good for me. I've put so many hours in. And hopefully other developers have seen that, and that's one of the lessons they're learning from Fortnite. Because like you said, it's probably impossible to ever get that big of a zeitgeist again. You know.
They hit. Everybody's going to try to follow them, and it's going to flood the market with a lot of bad games. It's going to flood the market with a lot of games that aren't going to be able to have the support behind it. The story behind Fortnite that a lot of people don't know is that company, Epic, besides making the engine that a lot of games use and having licensing royalties from that, and obviously a strong development community, they were making a different shooter game as well. And when Fortnite took off, they said we should put all the development tools and people we have on Fortnite. And so they closed that game down. They did something right by players, gave them all their credits back to use towards anything else they wanted. But they were like, we got to just commit to the service and the quality that we need for this. And a lot of game companies don't know how to do this. They weren't built for that. They were built to make a game and sell the game and move on and make the next game. And all the consoles, phones, Switch, everything is connected. You can download updates any day of the week. They're required for most games. And so we, at Riot in particular, all the games we'll make will be service-based, online games. And it's just the way that we think gaming is meant to be.
Perfect. Well, we're coming up on a half hour, and we always end every episode with sort of the same thing. We ask, have you eaten anything interesting or watched anything interesting lately?
I guess I would probably go with the watch because sadly I went to Nashville and most people would say, well, you should have great things to talk about for food, but I unfortunately didn't get to have a good meal in Nashville, so I can't talk about it. But on the watch, I have been really liking The Sinner, and I think it kind of got missed on a lot of radars. You and I have talked about the first season, but now the second season just ended, and I still really liked it. I think they did a really good job with character development, and there's one consistent between the two seasons, and it's this cop who's Bill Pullman, and you get to learn a lot more about him. They help develop him further, talk about the problems he's had in his life and as growing up, and you get to understand probably a lot more why he's an investigator and why he cares so much. And so I think for those that didn't give the first season a try, I'm seeing what they're doing now. So that's mine.
Okay. I finally watched Heredity. Did you see Heredity?
I didn't.
This movie was fantastic. It's a little slow build in the beginning, and there are a couple scenes that are just for, if you're out there and you have a squeamish person, there's a couple of scenes that are pretty brutal, just to throw that out there. But the way this movie builds up into the last hour of the film is just incredible. And I can't remember the actress' name off the top of my head right now. The lead in that film is absolutely amazing. And hopefully, I know horror movies typically aren't really rewarded very much, but hopefully she gets a nod, because what she does in this movie, I think it's Toni Collette, she was just so good. And I don't want to talk about the movie because there's a lot that, it's a mystery. I don't know. I don't really consider it a horror movie per se. It's a thriller and a mystery with some horrific elements to it. So I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to give anything away. But along with that, just because it just started its 30th season, I have to give a tiny shout out to The Simpsons, because I just do. It's been around my entire life. And
yes.
I think I do. I recognize that the last decade of The Simpsons has not been clearly the strongest decade of The Simpsons. And the season 30 season opener, which I watched last night after some football, was okay. Again, not the strongest Simpsons, but I guess I have blind. Like I said, it's been a part of my life for all 30 years, so I've got blinders on. I still love The Simpsons. So just a little shout out for them.
Well, it was an amazing milestone. 30 years of an animated show, I believe, is the record.
Oh, yeah. And, they're doing, the traditional old school model of 22 episodes. Oh, and speaking of animated season 7 of The Venture Brothers, it's out. It's amazing. If you're into animated shows, you should watch it. It's beautiful. It's great. Very adult humor, very funny, very clever. But I know it's not everybody's bag, so, yeah.
No, but it's a good suggestion. I'll check that one out.
It's really good. Some people just can't get past the fact that it's animated characters, but, it takes a lot of skill to draw. And voice work is not easy, and it's really well done voice work. So, but we want to thank Dan for coming on, and hopefully Dan will join us again at some point when his schedule permits. And that'll be it for this week. And next week we'll get back to more traditional sports talk. Do you have any sports stuff you want to throw out there?
I think you and Dad race in the next podcast, so I'll just leave that one.
Yeah, it's not a good year for Pittsburgh Steelers sports, but the Penguins look really strong. So,
Yes, for you and the other 5 people that love the Penguins and watch them that aren't in Pittsburgh, I know they're going to be strong this year.
Yes, that's about all we have. So again, please go rate us on iTunes. We can always use more reviews or a review if you have one. You don't even have to listen to the show. Just give us 5 stars. It'd be nice. We're near the holiday season. It's almost Halloween, so it'd be something fun to do. And we'll talk to you next week. Thank you again, Dan.
Thank you.